Hello, my name is Rahab. I work at FEDWIN. FEDWIN is the Federation of Deaf Women Empowerment Network as a program assistant. Today we have an interview with a guest by the name Ivy Boke. She's a teacher in a deaf school. So welcome to the office. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ivy Boke, and this is my sign name. I was born hearing, and then later I became sick and had some issues with my ears. And also I remember that my eyes had swollen, I had some issues with my health, and after some time I went deaf. One ear was the first to lose hearing, and then later both my ears stopped working. So what was the issue? I can't really remember what illness I was suffering from, but when I was born and when I grew up as a deaf person, and I had so many challenges. For example, in communication, I had so many barriers, I experienced so many barriers. The friends who I had been interacting with, my family, relatives, and even my neighbors, our interaction reduced over time because now we couldn't communicate anymore. Some felt that I was pretending, and that's why I was not giving them feedback, but the truth was that I had gone deaf. And from there, I started looking, I started searching for people, or they started looking because they thought that I had been bewitched, and they thought that that is why I had become deaf. So they went to some rural medicine, they used some herbal medicine, they put it in my ears. Some used, like, I don't know if you remember, we used to have some things that were foamy that they'd put in my ears, thinking that maybe I would regain my hearing. And even in the village, we struggled a lot because that's where I lived back then. So life as a hearing person and life as a deaf person was very different. I went to churches, they prayed for me, they tried to, even they put their hands on my ears, they did all sorts of things, but I wasn't able to regain my hearing. It was a very stressful condition. Later, my parents met with some good friends who explained more about deafness and what it meant for me as a deaf person. And from then, my parents now became active and started looking for a school for me to join. And when I joined this school, I learned sign language. Slowly by slowly, I improved. So I became deaf when I was 8 years old. And back then, I would interact well with my parents because I'd learned speech. I had some speech because I had been hearing. So my interaction with my family was normal, and sometimes we'd lip read. That is after I went deaf, I'd lip read or we'd do writing to one another. That's how we interacted back then. So when I joined the deaf school, I started learning sign language more through communicating with the deaf students who were there, the deaf learners who were there. So sometimes I'd learn sign language maybe through watching the posters that were there. They had some things to teach you. They had spellings, they had alphabets, they had so many things to help you learn. So that's how I started learning sign language. And even our teachers would empower us, they taught us sign language, and that is how I was able to learn more. So it was through interaction with other learners, the chats that were in the classrooms, and everybody was very supportive to help me to learn. So currently, I'm working for government. I'm working for the Teacher Service Commission. They have employed me. I'm working as a teacher. I work for the Teacher Service Commission, but I'm also a businesswoman. I do business, I sell soda, I sell different things. I have my own shop. And I also sell plastic shoes. Sometimes Okay, so when the school closes, I'm just not at home idling. I go to the market, I do some business so that I can earn some extra income. Okay, as a business person, you must, sometimes you have to employ someone who maybe doesn't have a job. So I have staff. I have employed some deaf people in my business. I also have my mom who is working and helping me with my business where I sell soda. And we also have some deaf people who have given some opportunities. And even my family, yeah. Okay, so I've learned special education and I have a diploma in that. So when I joined college to do my diploma, they were very flexible because I learned at KISE, the Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education, and they had a sign language interpreter. I didn't struggle much. They made me feel like accommodated, and I think it's a very good institution where people can go and learn. So in the future, I'm expecting maybe to a 1. Maybe I can expand my business next year if God is willing, of course. And also, I'm thinking of maybe doing a degree in special needs education. That is something I'm also aspiring to do. I want to grow as a businesswoman also to expand my business. So those are some of the things I'm aspiring to achieve. Okay, so I haven't really learned anything in business, but I have just tried to develop my skills. Sometimes it's not a must for you to get everything through education. Not everything you learn in class. Sometimes you can get ideas from people you interact with, people who have that skill. They can help you to grow and develop yourself in that area. Okay, so what I've seen in the rural schools, the deaf community is facing a lot of challenges because honestly, the learners need more face-to-face interaction, visual learning, because now if you're not learning with pictures, if they're not using teaching aids like visual charts, then it becomes hard for deaf learners to learn because it's only literal information. They're only reading. And when deaf children are allowed to have visual aids, to travel, and use even digital tools, it helps them to develop, it helps them to learn more. So I think the biggest challenge is that we don't have tools to empower our youth and our learners. And also we don't have the materials, we don't have resources. We have many excuses from parents telling us that they don't have enough money because we also remember their low socioeconomic status. So I think the biggest issue that we are currently we could say is challenging us is the resources, because parents maybe only provide maybe what they can, and what they can is minimal. Also, you remember that deaf learners need to learn using aids like pictures, charts, because we are a visual community. So if you give them tools without something that is visual for them, it's hard for them to understand, it's hard for them to interact with the content. But when a teacher tries maybe to make, maybe improvise, to use maybe different things in the environment to make things that they can be able to use to show the learners in class, then they become motivated, they become inspired to learn. Okay, so for the deaf children and children with special needs, we need to also respond using special needs mechanisms. Like we need to make sure that we are using strategies that are empowering them to be able to understand. You need to accommodate them in their level of understanding. And it's very important for the deaf community to see what they're learning than without visual aids, because we are a visual community, we communicate through our eyes. So it's very important for deaf children, because if you don't have the resources, now you're talking maybe, for example, you want to teach them about a cat and they've never seen a cat. They don't have a picture of a cat. They don't know what a cat looks like. So it's very hard for someone to remember if they don't have a visual image to connect it with. So you remember also the resources that we get. Sometimes as a teacher, you can try to make some things. You can, just from your own ideas, from whatever it is that you're getting out there, for free. You're not even charging anything. You just look for resources to come and empower your children. So it's important for teachers also to sacrifice to be able to support the learners, because we can't always wait for resources from government, and it also helps them to learn. Okay, sometimes from what I've seen, I feel very sad. Yeah, I feel very sad because people are taking advantage of our girls, especially deaf girls in the community. And of course it destroys their future. So truly, from what I've seen happening in our communities, I feel, very disappointed. Because sometimes we give them advice, we provide the opportunities, but what is important is for us to always make sure that we are providing resources and giving them lived experiences. For example, teaching them how do you get pregnant, what happens after you become pregnant, maybe how will you continue with your life, what are the resources that you have. Because most of the time you find teachers just give general advice, but they also need to interact with different people, mentors, different speakers, counselors, who help them to grow their maybe mental skills, who even help them to build resilience and to expose them to different opportunities, which makes them better. For example, you can get someone from a different school, you can get a guidance counselor, you can take them to a trip, to interact maybe even in hearing schools with hearing children, not only interacting with only the deaf community. You need to expose them so that they can also build their confidence. And also, we must make sure that our learners, we understand they're deaf, we understand their challenges, so we need to also communicate in a way for them to understand how they can avoid getting pregnant. What is important is to guide them, have different people speaking with them, giving them different experiences, so they're able to learn new things, new skills, hear new stories, and they feel that you're growing their capacity, they're able to even think even further than they used to before. Okay, I'm a teacher, but in the deaf community, we cannot deny that we have problems when it comes to language access. So we need a lot of practical work. For example, the hearing people can hear and write. They are able to use their ears and hear. But for the deaf community, we don't have that. So when a hearing person maybe grows up, they're able to learn and access language early. But when a deaf child goes deaf, their access to language reduces. And some are even delayed in accessing language. They stay for a long time without getting any language. So it also delays and affects their quality of the language that they use. So for example, if you can give them access to different resources, like Ikitabu have stories that can help deaf children to learn and access sign language. And also even they can even be able to have written language from such resources. Personally, I think that deaf people can learn all languages. But I would recommend that they learn Swahili. I would not recommend them to learn Swahili because for example, for a person who has been born deaf and they grew up deaf, maybe they can focus on one language, maybe English, for example, after they've improved English, and then maybe they can access another language. But if you're mixing so many languages at the same time, it confuses the child. For those who are born deaf. Those who are born hearing but go deaf later, I think it would be possible to have a bilingual setting. So what I would say to the deaf girls and the deaf girls in Kenya, or generally the deaf community, deaf youth, so you have to be wise. You must apply wisdom. If you want to be successful, if you want to achieve your dreams, you need to focus. You need to be very focused. You can't just be lazy, expecting things to work out for you. And how are you building your focus? You work hard in school, when you have a challenge, you don't keep quiet and suffer alone. You need to express yourself. You need to share with people in your community. If maybe you're in a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship, it's not bad, but you need to be careful. You need to educate yourself. You need to access information to learn how to care for yourself, to avoid things like early pregnancies or teenage pregnancies. And when you're done with your education, and maybe you're looking at getting successful, that's the time you can get a child and start a family. So of course you need to be focused and be wise about how you're doing things. Okay, so it's very funny that the reason why most deaf people don't go into business is because of an issue of confidence. For example, myself, I'm a business person and I love business. I cannot live without business. You can't just do one type of work. You can't just depend on your salary. You have to look for alternative sources of income. And how I developed my business skills is that I started interacting with people and I was just asking them simple questions like, how did you start your business? How are you doing your business? And it helped me to grow some skills and even develop confidence to start my own business. So you don't need to interact with a lot of language when your customer comes. I know the reason many people feel they can't join business if they're deaf is because of communication barriers. But you find, if for example you have a shop, they can show you what they want. It's just simple communication. So you don't need a lot of language. So deaf people can do business. I do business myself. So for example, if you have a shop, you have many things that you're displaying in your shop. So when a customer comes, they can come into your shop, they talk, you tell them, okay, I'm deaf. Maybe you can write to one another. So the language limits, yes, of course there are language limitations, but for example, when you're selling a pair of shoes, or you're selling a drink, or maybe you're selling clothes at Mtumba, second-hand clothes, you don't need a lot of communication. You just tell them how much it is, how much, and of course non-verbal cues. So you just need to build your confidence and you can go into business because business is also a very good thing to do. So what I would do, I would plead with the government to support deaf education. For example, the type of support that you give schools of children without special needs is not the same support you will give to children with special needs. We need more resources, we need more close monitoring, just working closely with the deaf community and even other people with disability so that we can be able to build our knowledge, skills, and to even help our children to be at par with the rest of the community. So of course, special needs schools need more support financially and even the type of resources that they are given. And the second thing I would say is I would suggest and I would plead with government to offer subsidy for recurring expenses, for example, power in schools. For example, you find sometimes you struggle because it's expensive. These things are expensive and they're recurring expenses. Also other resources that help to the learners to learn, like technology, laptops, computers, things like that, that help the child to access different and diverse information. So they should definitely budget for such resources to help schools for people with special needs. And also maybe we can have alternatives for energy. For example, we can develop strategies of incorporating green energy into school, like solar panels, to help subsidize the cost of things like electricity. Of course, deaf people will also be able to learn about green energy and how to conserve our environment. Of course, also issues like ICT, incorporating ICT into schools to help to reduce things like paperwork, stuff like that. So what I could say is that they need to provide some resources. Like for example, you could subsidize firewood with biogas. Maybe you find the school is in a setting where they're not able to access firewood easily. So, because some are in far interior places, in the rural places, and they have a lot of resources like cows and these things that could be able to provide those materials to generate like biogas, or even windmills that can be able, maybe it's a windy place, windmills that be able to subsidize the cost of power. So of course, green energy to be incorporated into deaf schools to help subsidize the cost of most things.